I need to share my screen. I hope you guys are doing okay. I'm in Dallas, Texas. And one of the neat things about our navigators is that we are throughout, there's 5 of us, and we have one in Central Texas, 2 more in Bryan, Texas, myself in Dallas, and then Miss Liz Stacker in Houston. So can we see this okay now? Academic navigators helping students navigate the landscape of medical school from start to finish. Okay, so this is just a touch on what these ladies and myself do. This has been a varied role. We get all kinds of things and requests from students. This is a relatively new role with Texas A&M, and I'll further explain kind of what it is we do and what we're up to and any potential other information I might help you with. All right, so here we are in Bitmoji form. We have Miss Rose Mastrangelo serving the Temple and Round Rock area. Liz works for Houston, as mentioned. Terri and Ashley work in Bryan. And the difference with us here is that Liz and myself work for actual hospitals, and Texas A&M is sending their students to us. So that's the difference among our team. So let me go ahead and move ahead. Today we'll present our Navigator program, as mentioned, what we do, who we are, and then if there's any questions or anything further we can help you with, we are here for that. So a brief definition of navigators is a highly skilled professional who works with the offices of student affairs and academic affairs to ensure students' needs are met. If you'll look to my right, one of the things we do is document all communications with students. This can be via text message if need be, Zoom calls, email, drop-ins. Sometimes it's a simple pass by in the hall. And while we are not advisors, we really serve as a communication medium for any needs that the students may run into. So on average, I think we're at about 654 students. If I remember, 1 month we had 648 contacts. That's information from I need help with my schedule to can you talk to me about this? Let me learn about this, whatever's going on. Anything that comes across our way, we document into this system so we can go back to it and look at it later if need be and see how we handled a certain situation. To ensure students' needs are met, we meet weekly with academic affairs and support to maintain lines of communication. We meet monthly with student affairs deans to report on the pulse of students. We attend meetings just to make sure that we're touching base and keeping students that are high yield or in need, that maybe something's not going right. It's just a good means of communication for us to touch base and relay information with some of our deans and higher ups. And then when we get to their M4 year, which would be equivalent to their highest senior level before they go into their residencies, they start interview season. So this would be in all of the specialties, be it psychiatry, internal medicine, family medicine, whatever the case may be. We are checking in with them weekly to make sure that they are finishing up these interviews and that they're getting them. If some students seem maybe not where they need to be, the deans are keeping an eye on that. And it's just to assure that the students are doing what they're supposed to be doing in order for them to get into their residency programs. So I think that takes place from about October to February. And again, it's just a weekly check-in. Hey, how you doing? What interviews do you have on your roster? And we just keep a running spreadsheet of it. So that's a busy time, but it's also really exciting because these guys are potentially figuring out where they're going to start working. All right, so one of the reasons we did this presentation was because of the innovative and dealing with all the changes that we have dealt with going through COVID. This role was new to me. I've been here going on 2 years, and it has been a thrilling and exciting experience, I can say. I never stop learning. It's something new every week, and we just do a multitude of different things. So some of our happy, positive commentary. You're so awesome. Thank you so much. You have always been such a positive and encouraging force, especially in the tough first semester of medical school. I just wanted to let you know that my wife is pregnant and she is due in late July. I would like to plan my schedule to be able to help with our newborn as much as possible, especially in the first few weeks. So there are courses and electives that we can shape around life events. COVID has not done us any favors in that, just like every other industry, I'm sure. But we have the capability to make changes when things get in the way for the students. So that's just another thing we handle. If additional test prep is needed, then we can sculpt their schedule to reflect that time as well. So to my right is the degree planner, and I call this my Bible because I will look at this for each of my students at least once to 2 times a week, especially during their final year. All of their electives can go through here. It tallies up what's needed, and then at the bottom, we have a number that we need to reach in order to ensure graduation. So there's a legend here that's the requirements that we're looking at. They take clerkships on top of this, and it's a good visual aid and tool as to what's needed, where we are, and what we lack. Another comment we got was, I definitely would have repeated 4th year if you didn't help me with my schedule, because I totally cannot tell the difference between selective and electives, nor can I add up the hours I need to fulfill requirements. You've been great and responsive, and I 100% credit you for organizing my rotation life from 3rd to 4th year. This is all thanks to this planner that Miss Rose Mastrangelo put together. So it has been a blessing, hands down. So again, we just serve as a bridge, really, and there's deans, we have doctors, faculty members, and we can help with communication, scheduling needs, rotations, as mentioned, and it's just another layer. So we have become a go-between. I work with Texas A&M to sort of relay information back to Dallas. That's been helpful, and it's good to be in that place because you do become the pulse of a lot that's going on. We collaborate with colleagues to find the answers to students' questions. Yeah, so counseling, career advising, some financial aid. I don't get that a lot, but that's one of the things that definitely we can find out information if needed. So let me see. I like this roller coaster graphic just because there are highs and lows of this job. There are definitely busy seasons. I think a lot of the navigators and myself look forward to summer and the graduation when they actually walk across the stage. I know I do. There's been some mental health challenges with the pandemic. We've learned about those. We've gotten through it. These are some things that we had not navigated nor charted before. So this role has really helped sort of get granular with what's going on, and we learn more every day, as mentioned. All right, more happy commentary. We would be lost without our navigators, from a dean. Not sure how we ever got by without navigators. Agree, they are awesome. Yes, navigators are awesome. So you get the point. We have some very helpful people, and we have some wonderful teammates that we work with too.
About 2 minutes to go.
Okay, perfect. This is our contact information. If you all have any questions or need further clarification kind of as to what we do a lot, and there's a lot of behind the curtain stuff that we do. Please feel free to reach out to myself to further clarify any needs that you may have. Rose's address is here, Terri, Ashley, and then Miss Liz at Houston Methodist. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Kelley. There is plenty of time for questions. If anyone has any questions, there was one in the chat about submitting the degree planner electronically. I will be trying to share resources through with the participants, so sure. That's possible. And any other questions for Kelley? You're welcome to stay on the line, Kelley, and answer questions in the chat if any come through. I'll give it another moment or two for questions to come in.
I have a question. I love this idea of the navigator. Can you talk a bit about how it came to be? Because I don't think that's a position that's very common. And so I'd love to hear a bit more background about how this came to be and how you grew it to having so many navigators at this point.
Well, prior to this, again, it didn't exist. I think a lot was put on our coordinators' plates to sort of divide and conquer as best they could. I joined right as this role was turning about a year old. So some of my fellow veteran navigators may want to chime in, but a lot probably got done once we were established. Go ahead.
Kelley, this is Angie. I can really address that.
Perfect.
So I'm Angie Harrell. I am, I lead the team of navigators and academic support services. So one of the things that we found when we were envisioning this role is we really needed a good liaison between academic affairs and student affairs. There are a lot of things that students have to do that involves both of those offices, but there wasn't anyone really assigned to take care of that. We had coordinators in academic affairs, but they were limited to individual courses. We had academic support. We had student affairs deans to do kind of the student affairs side, but really didn't integrate as much with the individual courses. And so one of my colleagues in academic affairs and myself really kind of envisioned what would that person look like. And we created the navigator positions. And because we are a multi-site school, we have campuses in multiple cities, we wanted to be sure that we had a full-time navigator at each site, really to help students really navigate and coordinate in between academic affairs and student affairs. And our first navigators came on in the fall of 19, the summer fall of 19. And then when COVID hit, it really, I think it helped us make the transition to online learning, helped our students stay on track, gave them a lot of comfort in they were being taken care of because we had such a team in place to deal with all the challenges that came up.
Okay, that's a perfect time to wrap up. Thanks so much, Angela and Kelley, for your comments. If there are other questions, I would direct presenters to, or participants to ask them in the chat. And let's move on to our next presentation with Aakanksha, Elizabeth, Megan, Woojeong, Denae, and Jessamina. You're welcome to share your screen. Thanks so much.
Hi everyone, can you see the poster?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Great. Excellent. So I guess we can get started. So hi everyone. We are Aakanksha, Angra, and Denae Harmon, and we are 2 of 5 instructional designers at the University of Minnesota Medical School. So on behalf of our amazing team, we are honored to present our medical curriculum renewal process and how we are engaging and supporting medical faculty during their pedagogical development. So currently, the medical school is following the traditional medical 4-year curriculum model with the first 2 years dedicated to the preclinical education and the last 2 years for the hands-on clinical experiences. The challenge of the current model is that there is a disconnect between the basic science content that students learn in their preclinical phase and the clinical experiences they have in years 3 and 4. So to resolve this challenge, we are completely revamping the medical curriculum across the 4 years. This is an exciting opportunity for us to meaningfully and purposefully integrate the preclinical knowledge and clinical skills that are necessary for future physicians. In this curriculum revamp process, the faculty are the subject matter experts. The instructional designers provide the structure and the pedagogical support to faculty. And we hope that this collaboration streamlines the education content and also facilitates communication between faculty groups to make this longitudinal, and integrated curriculum renewal project a success. So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Denae, who will tell you a bit about the responsibilities of instructional designers.
Great, thanks Aakanksha, and good day to you all, wherever you roam. So on our poster in the bottom left, here's a schematic that summarizes the 6 key job components for instructional designers. To give you some examples, for the curriculum renewal process specifically, we as instructional designers have focused on curriculum development by designing training modules and workshops on backwards design, Bloom's taxonomy, etc., to educate faculty in writing learning goals and objectives. And we'll be training them on rubrics and assessments as we get to those stages. And so far, we've also helped faculty align their learning objectives to national medical accreditation bodies. So we'll move now over to the curriculum renewal model itself. The overarching purpose of our curriculum renewal model is to develop curriculum for the preclinical stage that will better prepare students as they head into years 3 and 4 of the clinical portion of their education. Part A is our curriculum renewal process model that comprises of a preparation phase and 3 curriculum iterative design phases. So in the preparation phase, the medical school committed strongly to the curriculum renewal process, and the curriculum and assessment renewal task force was created, made up of faculty, students, and staff from both our Duluth and Twin Cities campuses of the medical school. And they selected longitudinal themes, we also call them threads, that would manifest across all courses in the preclinical phase. And so on our model right now, you can kind of see a box in the lower left that's yellow and orange. Those are our themes, our threads. So faculty were recruited to lead thread and course design teams. And again, those threads, to provide a bit more context, they're curricular themes of study that need to weave through the courses. And some examples are genetics, pathology, biochemistry, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. Courses are based on our human body systems and the new curriculum. And some examples, cardiovascular, skin, renal. Our new systems-based course progression model is shown also in panel B, and we'll begin with a fundamentals course before launching into the systems. In addition to faculty recruitment for the course and the thread teams, the university expanded its instructional design team, including full-time staff and a fellows program. 1 instructional designer and 2 faculty were assigned to each thread and body systems-based course team. During design phases 1 and 2, thread teams with designer support developed learning goals through an iterative process involving feedback from other threads, students, and medical school faculty before their approval by our governing body, which is the Medical School Education Committee. This process was intentionally inclusive, and it allowed for different stakeholders to have the opportunity to suggest changes and revisions to content, as well as prioritization. We were thankful for especially robust engagement surrounding the DEI learning goals, with recommendations on how they could be integrated throughout the entirety of the preclinical phase. If you are not muted, could you please check and see that you are muted? Thank you. After approval of the thread learning goals, instructional designers then supported the body systems specific course teams as they curated topic lists for integration with the clinical immersion phase. And so thread teams with designer support were then tasked with crafting learning objectives at the appropriate level of rigor to align those learning goals to the system topics, and then learning objective development that's currently ongoing. So like the learning goals previously, the learning objectives will be submitted for approval to our medical education school committee. And this model has been intentionally designed to ensure alignment and finalization between, again, those thread goals, those interweaving topics, and then the course topics, which were identified in our clinical phase and according to the graduation competencies in order to support those national graduation competencies. So in the third design phase, instructional designers and course teams will collaboratively design assessments aligned to those objectives. And then when the assessments have been finalized, we'll look at the learning activity design. Our new curriculum will be launching in the fall of 2023, and we'll be monitoring it continuously and looking for feedback to lead to additional improvements as we move forward. So I will pass it back over to Aakanksha.
Thanks, Denae. So our next steps are to finish phase 2 and begin phase 3 in the curriculum model, as Denae just explained. We are excited to launch our version 1 of the new curriculum next fall. And we look forward to monitoring, evaluating, and supporting the continuous curriculum improvement cycle. On the research end, we would like to create surveys to measure the effect of ongoing pedagogical training on medical faculty development. We are especially interested in measuring their progression in implementing active engagement strategies and confidence in creating and delivering effective and organized classroom instructional materials. We would also like to assess the benefits and potential drawbacks of medical faculty who are working with the instructional designers during the curricular reform efforts. Thank you so much for your attention. And at this time, we would be happy to answer any questions.
So you're welcome to unmute or put questions in the chat for this group. One question in the chat: how were DEI and anti-oppressive reviews of content conducted, and by whom?
Great question. Thank you, Jill, for asking. And I'm going to respond to it, and I want to invite my colleagues to jump in as well. So for the DEI anti-oppressive reviews, we opened this up to multiple cycles of iterative feedback. And so there was initially the DEI learning goals we were building from a list that had come out of a DEI task force that had started previously and included many members of our medical school community. And so starting from that foundation, had a dialogue about what were the specific learning goals that needed to be included. We had engagement from faculty members, from students, from staff, multiple decisions and conversations before the learning goals themselves were approved. We're currently in the stage where learning objectives specifically tied to those learning goals will be attached to specific courses. And so in some ways it's still ongoing. Can you let me know if I've answered your question?
Yeah, this is Jill. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we're experiencing something similar. So I loved hearing your experience. Thanks.
Yeah, we just kind of as an aside, the DEI topics, I think, had the highest level that I saw of community-wide participation. So offering that up for feedback and also hearing from students and what they really wanted to see highlighted in their courses, what they really cared about, I think was really valuable for the development of those goals and objectives. Yeah. Okay, I think there's...
We're about out of time on this topic, but I invite Aakanksha and Denae to please answer any further questions that might come through the chat. And thank you so much. We'd like to welcome the next group on the hybrid anatomy curriculum, Adeline, Maria, Stephanie, and Daniel. Welcome to introduce yourselves and share your screen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. It's saying I cannot share while another person is sharing.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. All right, let me try this again. Okay. Are you able to see my screen there?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Adeline Singh, and for my poster presentation today, this was a collaborative effort between Maria Ortega, Dr. Daniel Griffin, and Dr. Stephanie Carter. So I'm presenting to you today how we reimagine the role of staff in developing our digital and in-person hybrid anatomy curriculum. So as we like to tell, let me just make this a little bigger. There we go. As we like to tell our students, your cadaver in the anatomy lab is really your first patient. And this is the first time our students get to use the scalpel and cut into, the cadavers and really learn hands-on anatomy. But then the COVID pandemic hit, and that became one of the driving force that really challenged us with our anatomy curriculum at NSU. And this became even more necessary to look into a hybrid anatomy curriculum, because we had to take into consideration social distancing, which I'm sure like all of us went through during this time. So this pandemic led us to reimagine how we can deliver and switch from face-to-face laboratory teaching to a more online learning, where the anatomy faculty and staff can deliver the same type of anatomy curriculum to our students. So as I mentioned, in the background, we had to reinvent how we can mimic the anatomy lab experience back to our students. So what we did was we went ahead and we did an instructional hybrid design where we utilize different types of models. We utilize pictures, we utilize software that was available to students, and got together with our OIT team, with our different staff members, and tried to give students the same experience. I mean, it's not the same, as I like to say it, because there's nothing, I think personally, that could replace, the hands-on cadaver experience. But how best can we teach anatomy to these students? And that's what we were challenged with. So as with any change, there's flexibility that evolves, right? With every challenge, there's change and flexibility that evolves. So this conversion really challenged our mindset to reinvent this in-person learning. So we got together with, as I mentioned, the different OIT, the library staff, our anatomy staff, our faculty, and really put our minds together to bring this to life. What we realized from this was different roles evolved for each one of us being a staff member. And we had to quickly jump in and be a facilitator one day. One day we had to be an OIT person helping each other out. And we really, as staff members, pulled on each other's strengths. And this is the one thing positive thing that I would say came through all of this. We really bonded together. We used, all our resources. And I think that's something that's really important, as staff members, to really hold the hand of your peers and your co-workers when we're challenged with something like this, to make it work and to make it happen. So for all of staff members, regardless of what our role was, there was a drastic change in the type of work that we were expected to do. With the introduction of all these virtual platforms, we were all faced with challenges. Since there was really no benchmarks for reference and the minimal time we had to prepare and how to learn these new technology. So as you saw here, I put a couple strengths and limitations that we faced. And one thing we realized that as we move forward into the future of blended learning platforms between, specifically to our anatomy curriculum, both in person and supplemented with e-learning, we really feel like an emphasis is needed across the board for training and development for staff. A lot of times we hear, there's a lot of faculty development and there's so much limitations, I think, sometimes we face as staff members. But luckily, at NSU here also, they're really supporting our staff and putting forth, accommodations for us as staff members. And I think that's one thing that's really important going forward for, curriculum learning and having our staff. Oops. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we can see the slide.
Oh, okay. Going forward, as I said, for our faculty and staff. So this is just a snippet of what we went through during the pandemic with respect to the cadaver labs and our research labs. Right now we're getting back on track. And talking to students, one thing that they came back with as feedback, they really do appreciate the blended learning experience, because after they go into the lab and they do the hands-on experience and they come back and they refer to the different software or the models that we created for them, it's sort of, having them solidify what they did in person and back here in e-learning, because sometimes they don't have so much time to spend in the anatomy lab. So it solidifies what they did. So it was definitely a positive experience for us and it's something that we're going to utilize going forward to have the both blended parts of our curriculum. So if you have any questions for me, I'm here for you.
Yep, we have about 4 minutes for questions. If anyone would like to unmute, or there's one question in the chat. Curious about what kind of conversations take place prior to students' experience with the cadavers to help them be prepared and to minimize trauma. Any difference for in-person versus the hybrid model?
All right, let me read that myself because it's a long question. So as with, how we prepare them students for the cadaver experience, during orientation, we tell them, about the donors. These are people who donate their bodies to science. And, it's such a gift to us. And we feel like students really appreciate this. We've had instances where, after students dissect these cadavers for a year or semester, they want to meet with the donors of these family. We really never had any traumatizing experiences, thank God, I would say, because these are health professional students who are going in there, and I feel like they know what to expect and they know what they're coming into. So they also view this as a gift to them, that they are they have their first patient here. And I think they're very much excited to get into this. Any difference for in-person versus hybrid? Definitely. I've had students come back and say, you know, we did not have the experience in person, and if there's any way that we can get back into the anatomy lab. So here at NSU, we're trying to design a summer dissection program where students who did not have that experience to dissect a cadaver and to really, you know, look at the body as it is, come over the summer and have that experience. It's definitely different when you look at a nice picture of a heart model and you see all the veins and all the arteries and everything colored for you. And then you go in person and you have to figure all of this all by yourself. So it's definitely a big difference in person versus hybrid. And we're trying to accommodate students, you know, on both ends to have this experience.
Thank you so much. Any other questions for Adeline? Participants are welcome to put some additional questions in the chat or unmute. Have a moment or two longer before we start our next presentation. Otherwise, thanks so much. Appreciate your presentation, and we'll get ready for our next group on the assessment summit with Sadie.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. So I'm Sadie Harris, and I'm the Senior Program Manager with the Evaluation and Assessment Team at Vanderbilt School of Medicine here in Nashville. I really appreciate you allowing me to be here and talk about this. It's something that we're really excited about. It's the first time that we did an assessment summit last year, and we since have done follow-up summits in similar model. So let me back up a little bit. Let's talk about why we had an assessment summit. What was the need? So we were really looking for a way to norm assessment practices across all phases, inform educators about the resources and the techniques that are used throughout the school, and also improve the performance overall by collecting creative minds all in one space for a block of time, that when they could just really wrestle with opportunities for growth. So the goal of the summit was to provide time and a framework for our stakeholders to wrestle with those opportunities within the School of Medicine's assessment process. It was really an opportunity for educators and leaders and students to share their experiences and brainstorm solutions together. So really just providing that protected time created a great space for creativity. So ultimately, we decided to have this assessment summit. So it was a 4-hour event. We were hoping to be able to do it in person and have since held events in person, but I'd like to speak about the virtual version since we had to make some modifications to it due to COVID. So there were 78 participants. They were all divided into 11 different breakout rooms on Zoom, and each group comprised of about 6 to 8 members. When the participants first arrived, our deans presented a brief welcome and an overview to the assessment system. And then together we completed a SWOT analysis of the system holistically. So we tried to keep away from the sage on a stage method of just having one person speaking at the crowd, particularly with this event, because we wanted to improve creativity, but we also knew that since it was online, since it was all virtual, there's a lot of opportunities for people to easily wander without that in-person engagement that we get from the in-person event. So because it was virtual, we wanted to have just a very brief introduction and then quickly get into the creative fun stuff. So after that SWOT analysis, where everyone was able to utilize the same technology to input their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for our assessment system as a whole, we then broke everyone up into groups, again, 6 to 8 participants each. And the breakout groups were, the rooms lasted about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on which track they were on. So the participants in these groups, they discussed track specific prompts for each of the 3 tracks, and then they created related deliverables. Those deliverables, we asked them to come back to the main group with a 1-minute report out at the end, putting this time constriction on it, forced them to really provide feedback in a really succinct way. So when all was said and done, that's how it was run on the day of. When it was over, we reflected and really thought about what made it successful. We got a lot of great feedback after the event. And so I'm excited to share with you what some of those main components were that we try to incorporate into all of our summit events now moving forward, whether they're virtual or not. So number 1 was frequent movement, lots of prompts, lots of small time allotment for each breakout. So it kind of forced people to really get into a topic really quickly and then quickly answer some prompts, get some creativity around it, and get out of that topic. We think that these 30-minute chunks were really successful in fostering a lot of creativity, but not so long that people started to lose interest and lose momentum. So that frequent movement really was a big deal. Our breaks, this had to make the top 10 list because we did an evaluation after the event. We sent it out to all of the almost 80 participants and asked, what were their favorite components? What can we do better next year? And by and large, the breaks were one of the favorite components, which we found really wonderful. We think that the structure of the breaks was actually really great, that we allowed for a 30-minute break in the middle, and then 1 or 2 additional small breaks of 10 to 15 minutes each throughout the 4-hour event. That 30-minute break, everyone reported back that they loved it because they were able to go. These are all busy clinicians and deans and educators and staff members attending. And so they were able to go and handle some offline emails or phone calls, and then be able to dive back into the work and really give their whole brain to the work. And so they really appreciated that time. So they weren't having to multitask during the event itself. Number 3 was the wayfinding. So we had lots of wayfinding and agenda information throughout the summit. So if you see in the upper, I think it's the upper left corner for you guys, where those 1, 2, and 3 is pointing to with the agenda, that we used a program called Beyond. I have no commercial ties to them. That was just something that we found and we really enjoyed. But we were able to constantly have presented on the screen small videos with avatars. That's one of our deans, one of our directors, and my team, the little cartoon characters there with avatars that were recognizable to the faculty and staff who were attending. And just a constant reminder of where we're at, what's coming up next, what to expect. And that helped, especially because it was virtual, just with the guiding. It cut down a lot that the staff had to provide as far as verbally announcing that kind of information. Having timers on these videos also helped because we would say, we're coming back in 5 minutes, so they knew what was coming up. Number 4 was just, again, room for creativity. So the format of the event was really keeping the didactic information at a minimum. We framed the process, we oriented everyone, and then we just let the creativity flow. There were prompts provided, lots of prompts, but there were no leaders in each room. We tried to balance all the groups, and so there wasn't a person who was there as the main person who was doing all of the work. We wanted it to really be balanced and to hear all of the voices. So because of this constant movement, this really required, on a staffing aspect, a lot of boots on the ground help. So we recruited some of our amazing coworkers to run Zoom breakout rooms in the background and to compile data behind the scenes. And all of this kind of leads into number 5 on the list, which is just our amazing facilitators. We utilized 4 staff members behind the scenes in addition to myself who were able to facilitate, again, the movement and putting up the videos. And we did some quick compiling of data so we could report out at the halfway point what was going on. And so having people who are on board with you is really great. Number 6 is intentional groups. We found that it was really important to keep the group small. So 6 to 8 people was the general size, and to also keep it very diverse. We wanted lots of different hats represented in each group, lots of different roles. And this allowed for lots of lenses to be looked through as each problem was wrestled with throughout the day. And then
Got about 2 more minutes of presentation time before we open for questions.
Thanks, Juliet. And then we want to keep the end in mind. So you can see that's a blurred out picture of our final report. When you're collecting the data, remember that you're going to have to do something with it on the back end. And so just we found that using Google Docs allowed for not only great in-person collaboration, but also tracking of all input. We were able to monitor in live time what was going on, what was being collected, if they were on track. And then at the very end, it was very easy to capture all of that data because they were all in the same structure, and we were able to put it all into a final report relatively quickly. Number 8 is succinct resources. We gave primers in advance. This is a screenshot in that lower left corner of the very brief prompts that we gave. And so they're very, very short. They were 1-pagers at most, and then reference materials as needed as well. Technology is important. We used a lot of technology to collaborate, such as Miro, a Miro board pictured here in the lower right. That's actually our real SWOT analysis, again, blurred out for sensitivity reasons, but that's our what was the end result of our SWOT analysis when we were collaborating in that first block of work. And then Google Docs was really helpful for collaborating. We really enjoyed this like real-time aspect because people could see change in the moment. And then I think the last important aspect of a great summit is food. And sadly, we weren't able to deliver on this one, hence the little sad face down there, because we were virtual. So like many of you guys, we were experiencing some missing some of our food options that we usually have in these types of events. But that definitely always gets the people coming and staying and thinking, I think, when you've got some great food options. So that's it for this. I would love to open it up for questions if anyone has. I will stop sharing so you can unmute yourself and take let your picture show as well if you're interested. I say I'll stop sharing, but apparently I won't. There we go.
Well, thank you, Sadie. Any questions from the group? We'll give folks a minute or two to think of their questions, or you're welcome to post them in the chat as well. So I guess my question is, are you going to do it again?
Yeah. Yeah. So we actually just had an evaluation summit, so a little different theme last Friday, and it was in person. And so we were able to have our food and it went great. We used a lot of the same techniques that we learned from this initial summit and just modified it to be in person, which instead of using Miro boards, we were using, large pieces of paper stuck up on the wall, or whiteboards or Post-it notes. And it was really great. Yeah, a lot of great feedback.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for your presentation, and I invite the participants to please put any questions you might think of in the chat while we get ready to introduce our last group on the Medical Honor Society. Welcome to Eleanor, Benson, and Suzanne. Take it away.
Hello. Hopefully you can all see the PowerPoint. And then I just wanted to take a minute to thank you. Thank you, Juliet, for organizing all of this. I think it's going very well. So good morning. My name is Elena Turner, and I'm the Director of Operations for Equitas Health Honor Society. I'm also an education coordinator for the University of South Dakota Sanford School of Medicine. So I work directly with medical students during their clinical experiences. But today I want to speak to you about Equitas Health specifically, how we got started, how your schools can get involved, and what our vision is for the future. So first, just a little history about our innovation. Our Honor Society was founded by Dr. Benson Hsu and Dr. Suzanne Ruta in the spring of last year. But it emerged from ideas generated during Dr. Hsu's Health Innovators Fellowship with the Aspen Institute. Dr. Hsu's fellowship took place during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as data began to emerge about disparities in access to healthcare among not only sufferers of COVID-19, but also healthcare in general for different populations, it was clear that there was opportunity there and work to be done. Dr. Hsu has a strong interest in value-based care. He has a TEDx talk on it even called Getting What You Paid For, if anybody has 20 minutes later today. And it's long been a goal of his to increase transparency in medical costs and treatment plans. He is an intensive care pediatrician, and Dr. Ruta is a neonatologist. And so they both see the impact that expensive treatments can have on families every day. Yes, a child's life was saved by their hard work and amazing medicine, but is that child also now being discharged home to a family bankrupted by the cost of care? Here in South Dakota, unfortunately, we see many health disparities among our rural and Native American communities in particular. But we are proud to say that here at USD, students spend a lot of time among these populations, not only as part of their curriculum, but also through volunteer work, mentorship programs, going into schools, etc. We also know that we are not unique in that regard. We know that there are schools across the nation who are filled with dedicated students who see health disparities and inequities as they move through their clinical rotations. They are often making time on their own to find ways to help out. And I would say the shadow of COVID-19 has further brought out the vast differences in how some of our populations receive care, and our students are noticing. On the national level, this has recently been recognized by the AMA, who released the Advancing Health Equity Guide to Language, Narrative and Concept Guide, which is a roadmap asking physicians to consider the underlying social and structural causes of preventable disease and death among different groups, and to modify the language that they are using in their practice and in their note-taking to align with this worldview. Furthermore, this has also entered the sphere of medical education through the AAMC. A roundtable in Washington, DC in 2020 actually led to 4 recommendations endorsed by the association to improve the teaching of health equity in medical schools, including forming relationships with outside agencies and communities, developing equity-centered learning opportunities, and critically examining current practices and research with specifically health equity in mind. So where do we come in to all of this? This is the background, that's the big picture. What are we doing about it? Well, Equitas Health seeks to acknowledge medical students for the work they are already doing towards leveling the playing field in health equity. Other honor societies recognize attributes such as academic work or humanism, but Equitas Health wants to celebrate those future physicians who are working on the ground floor, those who perhaps seek out the hardest patients to treat, or those whose work takes them into communities which may be struggling to get their healthcare needs met. This work is, I would say, vital for improving patient health across the US and beyond. But until now, there hasn't been a formal system of recognition for the boots on the ground work that students are doing and are engaged in it. So Equitas Health has 2 goals. The first is to recognize exceptional medical students, obviously. But the second is to encourage these physicians of the future to continue their efforts beyond medical school. Membership to Equitas Health is for a lifetime. And we want these fellows to establish practices that continually strive to address health equity in their local, state, and national communities. Our vision is that these doctors use their membership as a constant reminder of the impact they can have during their hopefully very long and very fulfilling careers. In much the same way as fellows of AOA or Gold Humanism strive to live up to the expectations of those honor societies, we want our fellows to believe that health equity is now as much a part of their professional identity as the specialty that they work in. These are future leaders, and right now, during their final years of medical school, they're still forming who they want to be as physicians. If our big picture goal is to make healthcare equally accessible for all, we should be encouraging new leaders to declare themselves committed to equity right from the moment they receive their medical degree. We've made membership to Equitas Health an easy, hopefully very streamlined process. Chapter membership is only $100 a year, and this is for medical schools. There are actually 0 lifetime costs to the fellows that have membership. We settled on this fee structure to remove any potential financial barriers to fellows, as we want their efforts to remain solely focused on health equity and not worrying about additional debt after they graduate from medical school. The chapter membership does include certificates and graduation cords for fellows, and those are sent out to schools from our central office here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, in an effort to make this as easy as possible for chapters and for fellows. Membership also includes access to the Equitas Health Journal, which is currently accepting submissions on a variety of topics from fellows and chapter board members, and is hosted on our website. Honestly, we are delighted by the, I would say, explosive growth of Equitas Health from the last year. Already more than 15% of all US-based allopathic schools have already started chapters or are in the process of onboarding. And our goal is to double that by the end of 2022. Students, we have found, are hungry to set themselves apart from their classmates, especially now with step 1 going to pass-fail. And declaring to residency programs that they are an Equitas Health Honor Society Fellow who has demonstrated remarkable impact on addressing health equity in their community, it does just that. It's more than just a title. It is a proclamation that this student goes above and beyond, and exhibiting the characteristics that we strive to find in all physicians: compassion, professionalism, and capability. But establishing new chapters doesn't just serve the fellows. With it comes recognition that this medical school, this chapter, believes in the future of healthcare, believes in raising up those who need a boost, and believes in the strengths and skills of its students. It signals that this work is important and students deserve to be recognized for it. We welcome chapter applications any time of the year, and we look forward to receiving the names of new fellows in the fall every year. Schools who are interested in establishing a chapter can reach out through our website, equitashealth.org, or email us at the address on the screen to get the process started. There's also a QR code that you can scan. And that's all I have.
Well, thanks so much. There's one question in the chat, and I do want to alert the participants that breakout rooms are going to close very quickly. But if you can answer, what year of med school do you all feel is best for entry into the society?
In our school, we do it right before the start of right before their 4th year, the 4th and final year. So, and then they receive their certificates at graduation.
Thank you. There's just about 45 seconds before our breakout room is going to close. I invite any last minute questions or thoughts for Eleanor. Certainly a question in the chat: is there a list of schools that have joined?
We can certainly put that on the website. Right now we're just doing it by state, but as we grow, yes, the intention is to list all the members on there.
So is your 4th year students, they've already had clinical experience before they dive in? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your presentation and all the presenters today. And thanks to the participants for joining.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Hello,